Sports Professor Rick Horrow, welcome to Beyond the Scoreboard, the podcast that focuses exclusively on the trillion-dollar business of sports, but also from the marketing, endorsement, deal-making perspective, all of sports news. All of sports news is sports business and vice versa. That's why it got to be a trillion-dollar business, with a special emphasis on the Mid-Atlantic sports fan in all different contexts. We've got an interesting guest today, and he will be somebody who old-time baseball fans, Nats fans, Orioles fans may certainly remember his famous father, but we'll save the tease for a little later. Right now, the top stories of the week, and again, if you want our 15 to watch, plus some of the tech issues, log in and see CSN Mid-Atlantic, but also join us on our Apple Podcast and Stitcher and Audio Boom and all the like. The bottom line is this is unique to the sports fan for the Mid-Atlantic, but also from a perspective where we get behind the box score a little bit and beyond the box score, beyond the scoreboard, we certainly can focus on a number of different issues. Different issues today. Let's start with golf. Next week, the IWiT Tech Championship presented by Guggenheim goes on, and it focuses on STEM, robotics, training, a number of different perspectives that other people haven't really focused on. The brainchild of Dan Towers, who is the CEO of Guggenheim Life and somebody who put this tournament together with LPGA Commissioner Mike Wan. Bottom line of all of this is that it's a unique experience, September 8 and 9, on site at the Brickyard Crossing Golf Course at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Got a lot of different events. They've got something called BITE, which focuses on initiatives focusing on women in tech, STEM, robotics, but also from the food perspective. If you're a foodie, female chefs, restaurateurs, brewers, Indies culinary scene, which has attracted national attention over the past few years. Well, we're focusing on it. The Rachel Ray Kids Cook-Off, Disney's Food and Wine Festival, and other local indie events. And the IWiT Championship, Indie Women in Tech, activates diverse corners of America's tech ecosystem, highlighting Indianapolis' vibrant food scene and supporting exceptional women entrepreneurs, chefs, brewers, and more. And oh, by the way, there's a golf tournament attached to it. It'll invent some perspective, charity-wise, that really hasn't been focused on in years past. Should be a really good event. Stay with golf. Go down to Augusta. Upon the club's October 16 season opening, Augusta National Golf Club Chairman Billy Payne steps down from his long-time leadership position. Current Masters Tournament Competition Committee Chair Fred Ridley set to replace Payne. He served as chairman for 11 years. His legacy will be a terrific one. Sixth chairman of Augusta National, he invited the first women to join the club, vastly increased the Masters' digital presence, transformed the Augusta grounds with an aggressive promotion, including improvement in parking, on-course amenities, hospitality, and even how patrons arrive at the course. In 2007 alone, Payne helped land a new Masters TV contract with ESPN and added Mercedes-Benz and Rolex as the Masters' first two global sponsors. And going forward, Augusta National Golf Club now has a bigger voice in the game's issues and seems to operate with more autonomy, setting Fred Ridley up for success. And here's my take for all fans. Through his stewardship, Payne achieved a rare balance. He held fast to the heritage of the club, while looking beyond Magnolia Lane to see how the Masters could wield influence around the world for more than just 1 week each year. If you've never been to the Masters and if you play in the Mid-Atlantic, his influence is still significant and it is profound. Well, let's look backwards for a minute because everybody's talked about Floyd Mayweather and his 50-0 and Conor McGregor. They competed in one of the most highly anticipated boxing matches in the last decade, 10 rounds, and 310,000 people on one Facebook Live stream. It took months for Showtime to succeed in any sort of legal action to present this from. It could take months for Showtime to succeed in any legal issues that'll prevent this kind of thing to happen in the future. Live legal streams, preliminary injunction from a federal court in California has been sought. But as for now, people who took advantage of free live streaming can revel in their victory. Periscope, Facebook, other social media platforms. And my take is this: you better get used to it, lawyers and everybody else, if you're going to focus on the live implications of mega events. Everybody's going to be watching this injunction, but more important, you got to make deals with Facebook and Periscope and everybody else. You're going to be faced with this kind of thing in the future, whether you live in Washington State, Washington City, or anywhere in between. Just up the road, let's focus on tennis. U.S. Open, National Tennis Center. Last year, $150 million retractable roof debuted. Next year, 14,000-seat Louis Armstrong Stadium scheduled to open in 2018. And this year, $50 million purse for the first time. $3.7 million going to each singles champion. $50.4 million and a 9% increase going to the rest. Not as welcome are ticket price increases for fans. $60 daily grounds pass, the best value in sports, but every other price goes up. And my take is this: if you're a tennis fan, and like all mega events, the basic principles of supply and demand reign at Flushing Meadows, especially the twilight years of tennis and the global ambassador Roger Federer. Not a lot of the top guys or gals are here, and they're out for different reasons. Djokovic and the Williamses, but the bottom line of Serena Williams, she'll be back, and others will be back. But clearly tennis gets there with the young players and the old players, certainly more than ever before. It's a crossroads, and tennis seems to be coming up in a very, very positive way. Guess what? College football, here we are. First week of many. 2017-18 NCAA football season gets underway. StubHub ups its collegiate partnership roster to 50 plus 8 new properties and renewing 10 with the Power 5 and mid-major conference schools. The strategic partnership integration with industry leader Pacquiao, season ticket holders for the following 8 schools, will access StubHub as the athletic program's official ticket marketplace. Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Tulane, Northwestern, Cincinnati, Houston, Memphis, and Tulsa. And among renewed schools, Alabama, Georgia, Oklahoma, Florida State, Pittsburgh, big guys. Together, StubHub and its strategic partner offers proprietary ticketing integration technology, providing buyers and sellers an intuitive, industry-leading ticketing experience. They also provide a wealth of analytics from StubHub's 16 years of operation for every partner, by far the most robust in the industry. Coupled with the ever-growing appetite for properties to better understand its consumer by leaning on StubHub's breadth and depth of data, the long list of these new and renewed deals is a signal that the StubHub partnerships are something no one else can offer in the ever-competitive, ever-changing collegiate market. And also, my take is, if you are a fan of sports, you want national convenience, the industry seems to be geared toward maximizing this kind of experience for fans. It's good with college football. It's good for everybody else. College football, otherwise, get ready for the weekend. The focus seems to be on Atlanta. Chick-fil-A kickoff games, Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Saturday, Georgia Tech and Tennessee on Sunday. Saturday, obviously, Alabama, Florida State, a big deal. And Sunday night, FedEx Field, we all know, West Virginia, Virginia Tech. These mega games seem to be generating spotlight week one. Last year, overall week one viewership up 22% at a time when the NFL plagued with subpar viewership numbers from start to finish. Week one this year promising to feature some thrilling contests. The NCAA expects this trend to continue. But my take is this: on the other hand, you got to be careful, because overall CFB crowds did slightly decrease last year for the 6th consecutive year. The decrease was small, so the NCAA hopes to buck this trend starting next week. Well, we'll just have to see, and everyone focuses on Landover, Maryland Sunday night. Good to see college football at NFL stadiums and the promotion that it generates. Well, speaking of stadiums, and we talked about Mercedes-Benz Stadium, it'll be ready for opening day, everybody says, but problems ensue. The roof has required more money, more time, more steel, more stress than anyone expected. And the roof's still not ready to open completely and properly. All games and events now will have to be run under a closed roof for now, but over the past few months, the Falcons officials have listed multiple dates when they expect the roof to be ready. Now they say they don't know when. Architectural firm HOK, which won the $35 million assignment, is responsible for the roof design and implementation. And firm Senior Vice President Bill Johnston says that the difficulties had a lot to do with the fact that the design has never been done before. And my take is this: it is important to test a new design, and innovation always breeds risk. While Mercedes-Benz roof design was heavily vetted, simulated, and tested, real-world conditions can never be duplicated 100%. Expensive lessons learned, but you look back 5-10 years from now, and Atlanta having the Super Bowl once, maybe twice, and other mega events, Final Fours, conventions, the roof issue might be something to laugh at. Certainly, it's not a deal breaker, and the economics that this facility brings to Atlanta are well worth talking about. And anybody who's looking at new stadiums, especially in D.C., you ought to take notice about what a mega facility will do. Roof or no roof. Well, let's go west and stay on this theme of stadiums. The Niners have made a number of aesthetic changes to Levi's over the past offseason. In response to critiques, the venue was too bland and didn't have enough of a home stadium feel. The 4-year-old, man, it just opened, stadium got a touch-up with the addition of 100 portraits and banners, a new Ring of Honor, splashes of gold. The Ring of Honor features jerseys belonging to legends, such as Steve Young and his number 8. A lot of people kept saying, we need to add some gold into the building. It feels like it was all red and white. We're not the Cardinals, we're the Niners, so where's the gold? Well, the take is, sounds like the Niners and Levi Stadium officials added gold so they wouldn't be panned. How's that? Well, they've got to play better. That's the bottom line of all of this stuff. Stadiums important in another way. In the wake of the Manchester Arena attack and other acts of terrorism across Europe these past few months, English Premier League clubs started to consult with counterterrorism police. Manchester United, the first club to employ a counterterrorism chief, but others now following the club's footsteps. And recently, summit was held with every top-flight head of safety and security in attendance to assure safety at all matches this season. Counterterrorism experts not only spoke about what a preventative safety measure means, but what to do if a terrorist attack actually happens during a game. In Manchester and across the country, rings of steel have been put in place around a number of top-flight grounds, Old Trafford, Etihad Stadium, and otherwise. And the serious take is obvious. While it's numbingly sad that such measures have to be taken, better safe than sorry has never taken on such importance. One more life lost to terrorism is one too many. Let's stay with stadiums, but go across the country again here. And after the Chargers are leaving, San Diego State University still in the hunt for a new stadium. John David Wicker confirmed the university working with the city to find a potential stadium site near campus. Mission Valley remains the most promising area in which to build. And with the Chargers in LA, the Aztecs now the main tenant of Qualcomm, although facility officials announced the stadium to be closing after next year. The change doesn't affect SDSU's plan to land a new stadium, though it does put a hard deadline on the date when they got to move out. And one of the main reasons the Chargers left San Diego was their inability to work with the city to build a new stadium. But unlike a pro sports team, the university can't just uproot and move. And the take is, since no other existing facility in the region satisfies SDSU's needs, new solution needs to be reached, and reached pronto. We all understand how important stadium public-private partnerships are, especially in the university context. But the final stadium issue, be careful. A year after Rio's 2016, the Brazilian government trying to yet again sell Olympic Park after a failed attempt last year. They're pushing forward with its investment partnership program, Multi-Sport Arena 1, 2, and 3, and the Velodrome, and the tennis center, and the car park. The government aiming to finish the sale by the end of the year, relieving it from maintenance obligations, but not so fast. The government's paid $14.2 million to maintain Olympic Park, though the facility is mostly abandoned, damaged, or broken down. Fire recently destroyed part of the velodrome roof, meaning a potential buyer would have to spend money to fix the facility, despite it only being a year old. And the take is obvious. The Rio Games end up being the latest cautionary tale for cities vying for Olympic hosting honors, in line behind Montreal, Athens, Sochi, and others. There's a good way to do it and a not-so-good way to do it. And those of you who remember the joint Baltimore-Washington bid realize that L.A. faces some of the same issues that Mid-Atlantic would have had and everybody else would have had. And those are the big issues for the day, except maybe for baseball. Baseball with pennant races looming and wild cards making teams look like they're in pennant races when they have some major defects. So let's leave it at that. There is no greater challenge than consistency of hitting off elite pitching. Teams are always looking for new ways to gain a competitive advantage, and virtual reality may be the frontier for professional baseball position players. The Diamondbacks expected to adopt VR technology and help prepare their players for the tall task of hitting Major League pitching. The Diamondbacks would join the Rays as the only teams to use VR. On a sports techie product, Arizona Diamondbacks president and CEO Derek Hall said, "I think it's going to become a big part of the preparation for each team as well. I think we're going to start seeing the installation of virtual reality downstairs in the clubhouses or in areas where you have space available so they can go prepare for pitchers. It's clear that with the increased and basically mandatory use of sabermetrics and advanced stats in MLB, teams are continuing to look for data and technology to help gain their advantage. And the bottom line is, in the next few years, we could see a number of MLB teams using VR to train their players, spike from just 2 today to over a dozen." Well, let's pay a visit down memory lane, and I know this is not something that all of baseball fans would remember, but those who remember the old Washington Senators and teams in the 70s, and those who remember the old Orioles, why wouldn't you, may remember our interview and why it's so important. How about Pete LaCock? From 1972 to 1976, he was a Cub. Then he went to the Royals. He was picked in the first round, 20th pick by the 1970 January draft by the Cubs. He played in 84. He played in many games in the Texas League with the Missions and led the league in walks. No big deal. He had a career 27 home runs and 224 RBIs, 257 batting average. But that's not the reason we're interviewing Pete LaCock. His dad, Peter Marshall, Hollywood Squares, ran with Sammy Davis, ran with the Rat Pack. And when you focus on sports and entertainment, you usually find people who can't hit a curveball, so they go try sing. This guy couldn't sing, so he hit a curveball. Pete LaCock. Sports professor Rick Horrow, keeping score beyond the boardroom. Very interesting perspective here. We're at the Joe Maddon Trying Not to Suck benefit tournament. Yeah, don't blow me off the air for that. It benefits his Hazelton Foundation, HIP, the Integration Project. And each year it's been more of a tradition, but now we have a tradition of every year the Cubs win the World Series, we're going to follow up 3 months, 5 months later with a tournament that's going to benefit them and even generate more money. And one of the stalwarts of the Cubs, who has an incredibly interesting story, if not an interesting name, Pete LaCock.
Rick, glad to be here. It's a beautiful day here in Chicago, and I can't wait to get this started.
Well, and Pete has been toiling in the hinterlands with the Cubs, obviously, for years, and proud, like everybody is, player and fan, to look back and have people stop him on the street and talk about what it's like to now be affiliated in some way with the defending world champion Chicago Cubs. How does it feel?
It feels great. You know, when I first started with the Cubs, I was kind of at the end of the old guys era, with Sano and Kessinger and Becker and Pepitone. And, I learned a lot of baseball from these guys, and they took me under my wing when I first got up, because I was young when I got there. And I saw the evolution of baseball.
And the evolution of baseball has been quite significant. So from when you broke in, which was when?
It was 1971.
All right, so it's been 80 years? No, it's been a long time since you broke in. It feels like it. What is the biggest change that you've seen in the business of baseball since you broke in the early 70s?
Well, I think money is probably the biggest thing that you see. You know, when I was first year, his minimum salary was $18,000, and now it's almost $500,000. And so that has changed the game a lot. A lot of times when you were doing appearances, autograph things, it was to make money and to get by. But, you know, now things have changed where these guys have enough money to do whatever they want.
So 46 years since you broke in, and the payroll now for the Cubs starting this season was about $178 million. Do you have second thoughts? If you had to do over again, would you have been born 45 years later?
Absolutely not. I really loved the time that I played. You know, these guys were so dedicated. I remember coming up and seeing Fergie Jenkins and Billy Williams, and Ernie Banks, and these guys were making $100,000 a year. They played 20 years, Hall of Fame careers. Things have changed.
Cubs, according to Forbes, are now worth $2.7 billion with the B. They generated about $500 million in revenue last year. You got a $500 million Wrigley Field renovation in Wrigleyville next to it, and the Zachary Hotel, and on and on and on. And when you were played, was play ball with Jack Brickhouse in the afternoon. How does it feel to kind of be involved in a brand that's undergone such a metamorphosis?
It's really great to see it. And last year was so exciting. You know, the ups and downs in the playoffs and the World Series were spectacular. And if you don't like baseball after seeing the World Series and playoffs, there's something wrong with you.
Well, and obviously there's something wrong with being a Cleveland Indian fans at Game 7, right? So everybody in Chicago that I've talked to, it's generational. They remember where they were, the Kennedy assassination, the bombing of Pearl Harbor, if you go way back when. This rises to that. How does it make you feel being affiliated with that kind of movement?
I'm really proud to be affiliated with the Cubs, you know, and it's a shame because, you know, I played with the Royals and I was in playoffs, World Series, and they don't do anything for their alumni, not like the Cubs do. And Mr. Ricketts has made the alumni feel like they're part of the organization.
So the branding of the Cubs is obviously very important. How do you, and I think you just partially answered it, how do you kind of play your part? What is the next step to perpetuating the brand? It's now met the challenge of winning the World Series onward and upward, but how do you kind of keep pace with the brand and make sure that the Cubs stay the brand that is one of the top 5 or 6 in baseball?
Well, you know, you look at it, some of the older guys, they're older guys now. And, you know, the guys that are coming in, like Gary Matthews, myself, Bob Denier, you know, there's a lot of guys that are proud to be Cubs. We love to go to the ballpark and meet people and just, you know, be a supporter of the Chicago Cubs.
All right, now here's the piece that the Reuters International and other audiences really want to know. Pete LeCoq's baseball career is only one small part of this Renaissance man. So talk about Pete LeCoq and entertainment and your dad and the whole story.
You know, I grew up, my dad's Peter Marshall, the host of Hollywood Squares, but a lot of people didn't know that my dad's sister is Joanne Drew, and she co-starred with John Wayne. And, you know, we always had interesting people in our house, that's for sure. Sammy Davis Jr. was a really good friend of my dad's. There were a lot of the guys at Rat Pack, because my dad did summer stock every year in Las Vegas, and that kind of grew up in Vegas, hanging out with Joey Bishop and Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra. And Tom Dreesen's here, and he's a great guy too, and a good friend of my dad's. And you know, it's interesting because you know, growing up with that, you know, people always say, wasn't that exciting? Well, it was just, that's the way it was. You know, those people were friends of my dad's, and it was just kind of normal to see them around.
Most people try to grow up and play baseball and can't hit a curveball and go into acting. You have another perspective. When did you realize when you were growing up that your career was with stick and ball, not stage and screen?
Well, you know, I didn't start playing baseball until I was 14. And then I was a number 1 draft pick when I was 17. And, you know, it was amazing. I really wanted to play professional football, and I'm surely glad I didn't go that route. And, you know, in my high school, I had guys like Robin Yount, Rick Dempsey, Rick Auerbach, Kevin Kennedy, Guy Hansen, Larry Durker, Rick Durker, Larry Yount, you know. So we had a good baseball program, and we learned a lot. And we played a 62-game high school schedule. So we played a lot of baseball. there were a lot of scouts looking at other people, and I just happened to get picked up.
Sports and entertainment, you have the ability to see it firsthand, the differences and similarities. What are the kind of biggest differences between the world of sports and the world of entertainment from your perspective?
Well, the world of entertainment is definitely who you know. And in baseball, you can't hide talent. You've got to perform. Everything's a number, and if your numbers don't fit, you're not going to play baseball very long. So that's kind of it. My dad started singing in nightclubs when he was 12 years old in New York. And my dad's dad died at an early age, and he went out and he made himself who he is today. And I mean, can you imagine going to New York and singing in little clubs at 12 years old? But my dad's sister was Joanne Marshall at that time, and she was a Vogue model. And then when they moved her to Hollywood, she said, Marshall's too long. You got to go to Joanne Drew. So, people are saying, well, why is her name Drew? You're the Marshall. Your name Lecoq. My dad's name is Ralph Pierre Lecoq, and that's what my name is.
So Hollywood Squares with Ralph Pierre Lecoq Jr. or Sr., that wouldn't have cut it, would it?
No. And, people don't really know. He was a comedian, Noonan and Marshall. I remember watching him on Ed Sullivan. And, my dad was like a Ronan Martin type comedy act. And, Peter Lecoq would have been pretty good as a comedy, but, not probably good for Hollywood Squares. But he did Broadway most of his life. That's where he really enjoyed. He loves to be on stage.
So your dad lives in L.A. now?
He does live in L.A. He's still singing. He's 91 years old. He just was at the McAllen Theater in Palm Desert doing a concert, a Nat King Cole thing. And he's got a radio show, 5 days a week, Music of Your Life on PBS. And so he keeps busy.
Dodgers fan, Royals fan, Cubs fan?
My dad's a Cub fan.
He was because of you? Or, yeah, obviously.
Yes. And again, the Cubs have always been so nice to my family, my dad especially, when he'd come into town, they'd make him feel special. But, if you're a Cub player and it doesn't matter who your dad is, they make you feel good.
Talk sports for another minute, and we were going to talk about it anyway, but you referred to it. So this CTE study that was just done, and 99% of all the brains donated to Science from Football have CTE, they said. Ninkovich retires. John Urschel, this mathematician, retires from the Ravens. You said you made the right decision going into baseball. Give us your perspective as a guy who knows sports about how that all is going to end and where that is.
I don't know. I have friends that played professional football, guys from the Chiefs, guys from the Cardinals, and these guys, they got big judgment, $2 million, and they said they could take the $2 million back. I want my brain back. Can you imagine? You see, these guys are so big and so strong and physical, and I don't care what kind of helmet you have on, I don't care what kind of equipment, how good it is, you're still going to have brain injury.
So the other perspective is the way sports has evolved. Again, it's been years, but you're active in all of that. What's the next thing that's the next big thing that's going to change in the whole world of sports?
I really don't know. I think, again, you're looking at American baseball that's being controlled by foreign players. Pretty soon in 10 years, they may have 15% Americans and everything else going to be foreign. I played in Japan. I know that they're dedicated. I've played in Dominican, Venezuela, Puerto Rico, Mexico. I played in all those countries. And these kids, they want out. And they work hard. And here in America, I hate to say it, I'll probably get terrible calls, but the kids are pretty lazy here.
Yeah.
And, they're not as dedicated as these kids that want to get out of the country. They take these kids when they're 13. They house them, they feed them, they train them, and then they sell them.
Speaking of final comment, speaking of lazy, which you're not, you're looking good. There's half of you left.
Yeah.
You lost like 40 pounds. So a leaner, meaner Pete Lecoq. Athletically, you're still doing the things you used to do. So what's next for you for the next 5-10 years for yourself?
I have 2 grandsons, and they control my life. I love being a granddad, and that's what I'm concentrating on. I really am. Besides my health, the doctor told me if I don't do this and this and this, you're going to have trouble. So I did this and this and this. And now it's amazing. I feel good. I'm much healthier. And it just takes a little wake-up call.
So Pete Lecoq, sportsman, global sports icon, Peter Marshall Jr., you could say, obviously Renaissance man. Thank you very much, my friend.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Cool. Well, ladies and gentlemen, kind of interesting perspective. We hear more about Sammy Davis Jr. and Peter Marshall and Hollywood Squares and the Secret Square and entertainment and sports than the other way around. Refreshing to see that perspective as we're in a baseball pennant race. A lot of similarities between a successful athlete and a successful entertainer. Pete Lecoq certainly can attest. Well, thanks for joining us, and subscribe to us if you're interested. The Apple Podcast, the Stitcher, the Audio Boom, and our other feeds, and read our 15 to watch and our tech installation on CSN Mid-Atlantic. A lot of issues, beginning of college football, beginning of pro football, the women in tech, the baseball and golf playoffs heating up as well. And join us down the road when we go Beyond the Scoreboard.